AI is now, one could say, an extra pair of ears and eyes, because one of the things I keep hearing again and again is they can trust it more than they would trust a friend they would share their creative idea with, who may spin AI, which obviously is taking the world by storm, right? But then we have Quen, which is the Chinese version of OpenAI. And even though they're a little late in the game, they already are going to overtake OpenAI. Why? Because they have done something that OpenAI is not doing, is that they're really genuinely investing in diverse languages.
Next is I need a little bit more clarification. I kind of read it a couple of times. I love the quote, but probably there's a deeper meaning to it. Right dose of algorithmic anarchy. What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, this idea that sometimes, but this is very closely tied to algorithm can be a friend, right? Is one of the reasons that people in the global south, mainly the young people, which is the majority of the global south in these days, is that they're enthusiastic about new technologies like algorithms, particularly, is that they get that they can quietly make a difference without the people above recognizing it. Because if they recognize it, they will stop them from making a difference. You see? And I think this is something we underestimate, because one is less than 7% of the world's countries are liberal democracies. That's fundamentally, that's shocking. But
less than seven. Wow.
7% is liberal democracy, because there are majoritarian governments, there's a variety of types of governments which are more from paternalistic to pure authoritarianism, right? Okay. But if we know that the norm, the most countries are basically don't enjoy these kinds of freedoms, and then you add to it the conservative layer, right? Religious conservatism, cultural conservatism. You need to marry X from within your caste, within your religion, blah, blah, right? And then you have like restrictions of who you can be, like sexually, like I told you, majority of countries criminalize being gay, right? So if you happen to be gay, then what does that mean? And then you can go down the list. As women are oftentimes second-class citizens, inscribed by law, like by the guardianship system in many parts of the Middle East, right? Yeah. And so already I'm mentioning so many examples, and they're not exceptions. They account for millions of people in the world today, right? And what we're talking about then is that algorithm can create anarchy in a sense that this quietness of anarchy by shifting the system. And let me get concrete. Like, look at the railway system, right? A classic India, where there's a lot of corruption on ticketing, right? You have to bribe. And then quietly the digitization of it made it really hard to be corrupt. And this wasn't part of the agenda. Like the people who are, the everyday people, the middlemen, didn't have a sort of overarching control, no awareness of what this could do to disrupt the system. And so it happened, and then you can't put it back. And so this is what I mean, is that you can leverage on it. Or in China, if you want to speak your mind, or in other authoritarian governments, you use a lot of audio-visual content, which appears, it could be a propaganda where you're actually agreeing with the government, or it could be satire. And that's really hard to then, like wearing sunglasses. What does that mean? Really mundane. But if many users wear it, that means they're showing solidarity to a blind activist. And that was one of the cases in China. So, an umbrella movement. You can't ban umbrellas in Hong Kong. Visual umbrella. It doesn't make any sense. But collectively, it had a sort of resistance which didn't quite compute, right? So, and no government can just block an umbrella or sunglasses. It doesn't, and this is the beauty of our imagination of the everyday youth in these contexts, that are
Fantastic.
really keep playing with the algorithm to
Yeah.
get through these chronic barriers that have been
Mhm.
created won't seem to change,
Yeah.
for too long.
Yeah. Great. From this, I move to another set of quotes, which I'm still in the process of making the postcard, but I have the quotes with me, which is uh, thanks to Apple, I've been more into minimalism design and rational design and all that. But it's kind of a slap on my face when I kind of reading is uh, relation driven approach to design, right? More than a rational relation and relationality driven approach to design. You talk about that. And one more part of it is design for desire, right? Center for care, compassion, touch, and intimacy. Especially the area of sex and other things are taboo in many countries, still a taboo, but designed for aspiration. You talk about all of this, and I found for me it was a revelation to look at things from this perspective, which is designing for relationship rather than design for minimalism and a whole bunch of other things that have become extremely popular now. And where did you, how did you have view to this part of it? Because being in Western and the clean design and the European design to a different design approach is I see that in everyday life when I walk around in the cities of India and even in the villages. But this kind of really put everything into right perspective and words.
Yeah, I think, yeah, one is that we keep talking about automating blah, blah, automating creativity, automating, driving, automating everything. And I make an argument that there's no such thing as automating, because when we talk about automation, we're talking about replacement and displacement. There is assistive technology. All technology is intrinsically assistive, never automated, because that means it removes all human in the equation, and there's no such thing. All technologies are intrinsically assistive. So even with AI, it's inserting in a larger institutional practice, a larger social practice. And we have to understand how we are going to relate with these tools for what purposes, right? You can build the most beautiful tool, but if it's meaningless or it doesn't give me this sense of like, human need, it doesn't tap into that intimacy or affect or this real like relationship with other people, with it reconstitutes how I see myself in my family, in my community, then it doesn't matter at all, right? It has to do something to my social life. And that's really fundamental. And so this is one is relational, which means that we also start asking different questions. If I say, is creativity being automated, or how is it being automated? Then basically I'm looking at what is being replaced and what's not being replaced. But if I say assistive creativity or assistive to creativity, then I'm like, in what ways? How is it going to about it? Like assisting what parts of our relationship, what parts of our system, right? And so then you have to think about who are the people at the front end, the back end. So your focus is also on the people around the technology, not the technology at the center, right? It's not all about the technology. So I think that's really the fundamental, and which means also that I give numerous stories about intimacy, also like because one of the taboos, like I said, like the best kept secret, I said, is like porn, and and like, oh my god, you can't speak about it because that's not cool, especially in India because it's not thing. But we are one of the highest consumers. It's a Exactly. It's like an elephant in the room. The more conservative, the more we don't talk about something, the more it will go online. And guess why? Because these are teenagers. Have you ever talked to a teenager and told them, don't do this? And they're probably going to do it, you know? And also it's a natural part of our being. It's like, it's not, by the way, a lot of what is supposed to be sex is actually relationship, because young people are really lonely. It's not about sex. I mean, if we think sex about sex, then we are ridiculously mistaken. And we all know this in our hearts that sexuality is about our self confidence. It's about our feeling of worth. Am I worth, something? And if I have no sense of self worth, I will not be able to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm unable to perform and function optimally. I'm unable to have decent relationships. It impacts so many other aspects of my life, all because I feel insecure. I feel lonely. And these things, if we really are true to ourselves as a society, they are majority of what makes us who we are, that
Yeah.
fuels us, because what's the point of having wealth if you can't share it? Or having this amazing accomplishment if you can't have someone to celebrate it with,
Yeah.
etc. And I think that's why I emphasize that this has been the gateway to the internet. Intimacy, romance, and this is a relational. So we have to understand that it's also a relation with the tool itself, because I
Mm.
feel very intimate because it's allowing me to have a relationship with someone out there. Or I'm very lonely as a Bangladeshi worker,
Mhm.
in Dubai, and I'm working 14 hours a day. I come home is basically a bunk bed with 8 other workers,
Mhm.
and I can go on my mobile and I have this online girlfriend, who asks me how's my day and what am I up to, what do I eat, and that is why I, get by every day, not the 14 hours of mind-numbing work. If we
Mhm.
don't get that, we will not get why people, the majority will do what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is beyond the quotes. As a parent, and my previous company was into school education. So a lot of people fear, and almost probably from the West, and probably here the case is also genuine that kids are addicted to mobile phones and also always on the Instagram, and digital addiction is big. Uh, how to be optimistic on this news tech, right? Because that's what your book drives, right? And you're not debunking saying that all tech and everything is nice and hunky dory, right? You're not saying that. You're saying that there's a valid, but there's a whole optimism and its unleashing of power and changing people's life, right? So, how do you strongly keep this narrative correctly on also in terms of building new companies and startups here? How do you be optimistic, especially this whole deluge of information on kids and teenage getting addicted, and it could be porn addiction to just a doom scrolling, right? To how do you remain optimism?
Yeah, so basically, the impact of social media on mental health is a conversation happening around the world. As we know, like say in the US, they literally are banning mobile phones, and they even are like the Surgeon General says that it's social media is bad for your mental health. We should have it like as a cigarette is smoking kills, right? Like so in the US, it's extremely heated and negative. Like social media is antisocial, basically, right? And even in Europe, it's the growing fear, and in India, so it is now seeped across board. But if we look at the reports, for example, the whistleblower in Facebook and now Meta, when they came out with how they're targeting young people and it's creating depression, I believe her name is Frances Hagen, who testified what the same report also said that twice the number of young people also said they felt a sense of solidarity and community online on Instagram because parents and all didn't understand them, and they felt incredibly lonely in their school, etc. And that's why they were able to get by. So the fact is, both realities are true, but what we choose to ignore is the other side of the coin, which is actually like basically it was more users reporting positive health while acknowledging the risk, right? And that report is out there. And we even have an interesting article by Economist which reflects and says, why did the media decide to choose on the negative and not counteract it by saying within the same report, literally paragraphs down, that, they also talked about the positives because we have, as parents, feel like we're losing control. And, because it is true. We have our gut level is true that we want to protect, you know, but that's the very reason why these kids are moving away from us. And one of the very dangerous positioning is that if they are online, they're antisocial. But what we don't get is that they are social, but they get to pick who they are social with. And I'm not, by the way, of course, like any technology needs its limit. You need to build. I remember when mobile really hit India majorly, and I used to come home regularly, and my friends, we went out, and everybody was on their mobile. Like we were all out for dinner, and nobody was talking to each other. And I was like, yeah, I was like, what is that? But wow, it's not the case. I mean, yeah, in fact, if anything, we want to, people will say, hey, what are you, man? Put the phone away, right? Like you would say that. I mean, no, we all evolved. Like, no, I remember also when mobile came to India, people were answering the phone calls, including my own family, all in movie theater. Hello, yeah, I come here. You come here. And now, very uncool, right? And this is something which I'm optimistic about because we built social rules collectively. There was no memo out there for people to say, hey, this is not acceptable. It's just that we all slowly, quickly realize we don't value this face-to-face relationship if we are on our phones, we are disrupted. And that is really promising because that's a sort of collective energy to getting on board in a sort of mimetic way, saying, hey, there's something about a pure space and time. But of course, we do need to work, to steering kids in that direction and getting them to focus more on the positive aspects, but also protecting them from the harmful aspects. And so I absolutely do not undermine that because that's our responsibility as regulators, policymakers, parents, etc.
Fantastic. Last, many of this new, at least the science fiction, which kind of gives a path to the future, is all dystopian, right? Um, what is your vision, or how do you see the world progressing towards? I don't believe in something automatically happening. We have to play an equal part in shaping it to decide the future. Uh, but I want to see, because this book is whole thing about optimism, right? How do you see the future, especially for the global south?
Well, the one is I see the future by positioning the global south at the center, in reclaiming our faith in the future, right? Like, for example, in recent years, surveys have been done about how the world looks at the future, like our global surveys, right? And the West dominantly feel like their future is very dismal, whether it's with the climate crisis, whether it's with mental health and social media, whether it's with anything to do with AI, basically, right? And so they reportedly have very low faith. And in fact, they've become more depressed from a decade ago, including the US, which has usually been optimistic about technology. Whereas the rest of the world have reportedly expressed far more enthusiasm. In fact, India continues to rank as a number one most optimistic country consistently every year in these global surveys. So what's going on? And also sub-Saharan Africa, because they're dominantly young people who have their life ahead of them. So they refuse to get depressed. I mean, can you imagine good ideas have come from a point of depression, right? And they, relative to, their parents or their grandparents, they actually have a little more opportunity, particularly thanks to digital media. So, the governments can be really slow at getting them jobs, but meantime, they come up with ways to monetize their content online. They have a little more tools for agency than they had when their parents were their age, right? And they recognize that. So even say your school is shit, your teachers are horrible. You have done this vast repository of, and also you can take online courses, etc., right? So you feel like you have a little more control than what others had a decade ago. So it's not naive. It's actually built on something real that they compare to also like the freedoms their grandparents or the parents had, whether it's to do with marriage or how they landed up in their own job, which they keep bitching about, but they're stuck in it. And they're like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm going to do something different. I don't have to get married at this age or do this at this age. Or why should I? I'm a boy. Why should I be a computer scientist or an engineer? Is that all I'm good for? They see other examples, role models. And I think that's to me really why we can get hopeful is because if they can be hopeful, so should we. Whether, and I'm talking about we in terms of us, of our generation, there's a generational element. And internally within India, across the world, Europe is aging, you know. And so as you get older, you tend to get like just crappily sad about it. And you just like one of those, start complaining about everything. We haven't forgotten what days are. We just have romanticized the past. But,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
so there's the other element is that I think it keeps me optimistic because it is contagious. When I
yeah.
see them being optimistic, then it makes me feel that I need to do better
Mhm,
because we have power right now. You and
mm,
I, many of us, we get to still shape these systems within which these people, young people, are going to live in.
yeah.
So we have a responsibility to translate their optimism into designs that work for them, which will also help us get out of our pessimistic mood.
Very true. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to recommend this to every startup entrepreneurs in India, in Global South, because I have access to India and talking about India. Also to policymakers, artists, creators to read this book because it shows the new energy that is here, and we can use these tools. And humans have always used tools to unleash their potential, right? Which you said that our imagination is so good, it can fill in all the gaps. Again, it's again one of the quotes from your book, and uh, I'm going to recommend this book to a lot of people. I love it. I'm going to read it once more, and I've done my homework. Like I said, I liked it so much that I made this postcard. I'm going to
Oh,
mail this postcards to you. If you really like it, probably I can make multiple sets and we can mail it to you. And great, and lovely having you with us, Payal Arora. Fantastic.
thank you
Fantastic.
so much. And tell your daughter I'll follow her on Instagram if she's on it.
Yeah, she's on Instagram. She's on Instagram,
Hey,
and I'm going to.
you send it
She's,
to me. Give me her plan so I can follow.
oh yeah,
No,
I will certainly.
I really enjoyed this fun.
Same here, same here. I enjoyed your book. I enjoyed your thought. All we need, only positive optimism has changed the world, right? Has moved the world. Pessimism has never done that. It is sad that all this new tech, we should take it to the right dose. I don't want to debunk those are not the false thing. Black Mirror can be a reality if you don't um, channel this technology the right way. But optimism is much, we don't have a choice, especially in Global South. We said we don't have a choice. We have to be optimistic because there's so much of things that we can do. The energy is very high. The youngest population is in the South. Plus, there's a lot of real problems around us, right? Right from potholes to other things where we can solve these problems and make life better, right? So thank you so much for your time. I thank you so much again, right, for this wonderful book, and wish you to write more such books. And all the best for some of the research that you're doing. I've made some notes on that, and separately, I'm going to reach out to you and see if any way which Random Walk can collaborate with the wonderful work that you and your team are doing.
I'm
Thank you so
looking
much. Bye.
forward to that. Thank
Yeah.
you.